If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Warmer from the low, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in a few minutes by Ryan McIntyre, who does such excellent work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast. So we're taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. We're going to be chatting with him about what he's made over the last few weeks in the transfer portal, some of these mid-major schools being able to rise up, some of these guys are flip-flopping teams as well, and so much more. And then in the final segment, we're going to get you guys a recap of all the news and notes that we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter / X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, the name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter / X questions today, and please do send those in. If you want to hear something on this podcast, we do have 6 months left still in the off season, so it's a little bit less than savory. But if you do go on over to edgeboost.bet and utilize promo code Greg, G-R-E-G, you're able to get a dollar for dollar match over there on your first $25 deposit. And over at EdgeBoost, they make sure that you're able to access your funds 24/7, 365 on all gambling related transactions. So they do a tremendous job there. And also, as a tremendous job is Ryan McIntyre, who's over there at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, does the show The College Experience with our good friend Kobe Dant as well. You're able to follow him on Twitter / X at Moneyline_Mac, spelled M-A-C, and it is always a pleasure, my friend Ryan. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me, Greg. Happy, I guess, May Madness, aka Portal Madness.
Yep, absolutely. And a lot of the big names are off the board, but how do you take a look at things this time of year? Because, I mean, a lot of these power conference teams, they've got their starters in place, but as we know, the mid-majors, they're still very much looking to be able to get some nice finds, and some of those guys that are still out there in the portal, they're starting to get a little bit more hungry to sign with the team.
The market's watering down a little bit, and roster spots are more limiting. And just talking to different people, coaches in the industry, a lot of guys will keep 1 to 2 scholarships open. So in case of hopefully this doesn't happen again this year, Bob Huggins situation, or some coach that maybe leaves for the NBA, that would open up another 30-day window. So I think you see a lot of programs leave 1 to 2 spots open at the high major level. But you are right. This is the time of year where the mid-majors finally start to get some quality guys through the portal.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that it is so interesting to take a look at, especially what you're noticing with your alma mater over there at West Virginia, because they've been one of the most interesting teams this offseason. Obviously, they had the Trayson Eaglestaff situation with him leaving South Carolina, deciding to go on over to West Virginia. And it feels like every week West Virginia has had a very rock-solid signing. Like a few days ago, I know that they were able to get a nice ad with bringing in Brennan Laurent, who was over there at North Texas along with Coach Hodge, so that was a very solid one. And on top of that, they're going to be bringing in some of these guys like a Chance Moore, what have you. And I think that for West Virginia, this has been a very successful offseason, and a offseason where with the Big 12, I feel like it's been a little bit hit or miss with some of those teams.
Yeah, it has. It's always good when the offseason is drama-free, so that's been a nice breath of fresh air. I know DeVries started it a little bit when he took the Indiana job, but I mean, Hodge and his staff's done a good job identifying guys that are going to be good fits in the system. Guys from winning programs, guys from North Texas, Chattanooga, UNC Wilmington, St. Bonaventure, you go on and on. I think they've done a really nice job to put them in a position where I think they could be an NCAA tournament in year number 1 of this new era.
Yep, I do think that they can have some success right away in the Big 12. As joining me on the show, we do have our good friend Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network joining me right here. And how do you take a look at the entirety of the Big 12? Because there have been a few teams where it's sort of been a little bit hit or miss, because I was talking about it. West Virginia, I feel like, has done a rock-solid job. Texas Tech, they always seem to get it right in the transfer portal. Houston hasn't necessarily brought in a lot of transfers, but that's because they don't need to bring in a lot of transfers. But I take a look at a school like Arizona. I do have a few question marks with regards to them. Will Baylor be able to rise back up to the top as well? So, I mean, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag, in my opinion, with regards to conference as a whole.
It really has. And you mentioned Houston. They don't have to bring in that many transfers because they're able to retain their own. So that, to me, is the biggest ones of the offseason, when you can retain guys that have played meaningful minutes and helped you win a lot of big-time basketball games, going to Sweet 16s and then the Final Four National Championship this year. But Texas Tech, I think, will be really good again. I think Kansas will be a lot better than people think. I think maybe flying under the radar isn't the worst thing in the world. And I think they'll add a big name or two here after the NBA draft process shakes out. But, I mean, I think the Big 12 is going to be strong as a whole once again next year. You know, it wasn't as good as the SEC this year, but with how good it's been over the last decade, it just every night is a gauntlet, it seems.
Yep, it certainly is. And I just really look at all three of those top leagues, the SEC, the Big 12, and the Big 10. And I think that they have very much just separated themselves from like the ACC, the American, those other leagues out there. And I will give a little bit of an ode to the Big East as well. I do think that they're behind those three leagues I mentioned, but certainly with regards to Big East, I feel like more of those middle teams were able to have a nice offseason as well. But how do you view things in terms of those top three leagues as I laid out? Because I do think that there is becoming a little bit more of a divide between those power conference schools and some of those mid-majors that are trying to rise up.
I think the main thing, and I agree with you, Greg, that I think that they've really separated themselves. I would say the main reason they've been able to separate themselves is A, they're collectives, but B, they really haven't whiffed on coaches. And that's been the biggest thing of why the ACC, I think, has taken a step back so much. It has been their coaching hires. But I think that they've been able to at least hit on a couple good ones, and guys like Will Wade, Ryan Odom, Pat Kelsey last year. But I do agree, those other three conferences, the Big Ten, I think, is going to be really good and really balanced once again this year. SEC just seems to keep getting athletes on athletes because of their football money and the trickle-down effect. And then the Big 12, just all around, just good cultures and really good Hall of Fame coaches all throughout the league. And then, of course, the Big East just has the really cool pedigree and just a tradition and history. And they've done a good job with their coaching hires as well, bringing in guys like Rick Pitino.
Yep, no question about it. And the fact that the Big East doesn't have to invest in football as well, that's been helping them out quite a bit as well. And I'm so glad that you did mention the ACC, because there's been a lot of news on them with going from 20 conference games down to 18 conference games. And you mentioned it with the coaching hires. Just how do you view that conference? Because they're right now a little bit of an unknown for me, because we know that Duke is going to be there. We know that North Carolina is going to be there. And I feel like it's pretty safe to say that Louisville, Clemson, they're not going to be abject disasters or anything like that. Most likely competing for the NCAA tournament. But outside of really like a big five, I like what Virginia's done this offseason. I do think that there's question marks, including a team like an NC State, where I love the hire of Will Wade. I just don't know if it's going to gel year number one or if it's going to take a little bit longer.
NC State's going to be interesting because I think they're trying to add another name or two still here. And, you know, Will Wade, he finds a way to always get guys.
Making a hard offer.
Has never been exactly. And that's just another Tuesday nowadays, offering them a strong offer. I think that Virginia's going to be really good. It's Tony Bennett was reluctant for whatever reason to open up the checkbook. It just wasn't his style, and that's why he retired. Carolina's been able to add some pieces, but I'm intrigued by them because I don't know how good they're really going to be. And, of course, Duke is going to be rolling in Louisville's payroll is north of $10 million, so that always helps to be able to build a nice roster.
Yep, that certainly does. When you're able to have that sort of money, you know what, you're going to be able to get some guys in there. And that's exactly what we paid Ryan McIntyre to be on this podcast right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. Unfortunately, there might have been a few smaller zeros out there on that paycheck, but no doubt that's going to be interesting to take a look at. And with regards to what we're seeing nationwide as well, I think that now is really the time for the strike for these mid-majors too. Like there have been a few, like a High Point, for example, that have really been able to make some inroads with regards to the transfer portal. I do take a look at what has been happening out there in the Coastal Conference as well. Even a school like Campbell's been able to get in on it. Charleston, these schools have been relatively solid. UNC Wilmington, they deserve a little bit of credit as well. But I think that they really become the schools of note here in the next few weeks because those guys are sort of thirsty to sign an offer. I think some of them might be looking a little bit more for playing time and might be willing to pass up a few dollars to be able to get those starting spots.
Yeah, and Greg, I talked about it with you on this show before that I think a lot of the guys, they lose track of the big picture and want to be able to set yourself up for that second contract in the NBA if you can. So if you can hit and maybe you're 2 years away from being able to go to the NBA, you go down a level, you put up big numbers, then you could transfer up to the high major and Power 5, and then you can, I think, really make a jump there and make a nice NIL check. So it's all about fit still. I know it's the era of everybody chasing the bag, trying to get as much money as possible. But fit, system, really, I think it sets you up for the next contract that ultimately can get you the big, big payday.
And in some cases, the big payday in college too, because how often have we seen it? A guy go from one school to the next, and then you set yourself up for the NBA as well. So you're setting yourself up for essentially two different deals in two different, shall we say, leagues, but both involving basketball. So that becomes interesting in this day and age. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because some of these up transfers, I think, are going to be some of the most interesting guys as well. And just how do you try to decipher which guys are going to be booms or busts? Because that's one of the most difficult things for us to do. And I'm sure if anyone could find a solution for us, it would be very, very much appreciated, because that's always been one of the toughest things ever since we've seen more transfers and fewer freshmen playing more minutes.
If you have all those answers, there'd be a lot of coaches that would want to hire you on their staff right now. Just ask Bill Self. I mean, he unloaded and paid so much money for that roster last year, and he didn't get a good return on investment. I know these schools, these programs, these collectives have so much money now. We're seeing Kentucky close to $20 million roster. If the pieces don't mesh and the egos can't all be on the same page, all row in the same way towards one goal, it doesn't matter how much money you have. So it's all about if these guys can come together. And it's hard because it's not like you get them for 2-3 years. Like, all right, we can mesh in the second year. You only get these guys 2 to 3 months, and really only just a couple weeks to really get going, because you can damage your whole resume and be battling an uphill battle the whole season if you don't get a couple big wins in November and December.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And how much would you say that there should be a little bit of caution with some of these players that they do sign on with like 3 schools in 3 years, 4 schools in 4 years? Because when you bring up Kansas, all I could think is, wow, AJ Storr really tanked that team. And I thought that was something that was very big, and it's just something that I personally have noticed. These guys that maybe they transfer once, but they stay at a school for multiple years, typically they have success. Meanwhile, that guy is sort of the, shall we say, globetrotter that's going 4 schools in 4 years. Typically, those are the guys that feels like fizzle a little bit more.
Yeah, I know you love talking about AJ Storr being a Wisconsin fan. Yeah, I definitely think, although it seems like guys that are on their 3rd and 4th school is more common now, but I think you do have to proceed with a little bit of caution, especially if the school that they leave ends up better the next year. I think that could be a little bit of a red flag. And we've seen that with big names that leave schools, and whether it's St. Mary's or Michigan with Dickinson, like they get better once they leave. And I think that that's kind of a red flag. And a lot of guys could put up numbers and put up statistics, but can you impact winning? Can you be a good teammate? A lot of the core values still that we have talked about in sports for years and years still do apply. And I would definitely do a lot of research and homework on guys that are on their 3rd, 4th, and heck, even fifth school. I think the schools that like the Houstons, like the UConns, that have really good cultures, I think that's why they don't really ever take those kind of guys.
Yep, and then you could always be our good friend Mr. Duke Miles, who I think is on school number 3 this offseason after he signed with Vanderbilt as well. So that's becoming more common in this day and age as well. And Ryan, I know you're doing a great job deciphering this game of basketball, and you've been looking at all these different schools. Is there one or two that come to mind that maybe we're not talking about too much? Maybe it's one that you've been identifying and you're wondering why the school is not getting the love that they deserve, that you want to just air out here, because I do think that it's been a very interesting offseason. Now, finally, some of these rosters are starting to come together a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if I really have like one or two. The schools that have been able to keep it intact with their cores are going to be really, really good next year, and really, really good in November. Houston and Purdue, back-to-back national runners-up. You know, they're going to come in with a chip on their shoulder after tough ending to their seasons. But I also look at some of the mid-majors that bring back a lot of guys. I think St. Mary's is going to be really, really good once again. Gonzaga's bringing back a lot of good guys. But I think this is a big month for some of those mid-majors in the SoCon, the CAA, the Horizon, the Missouri Valley, the leagues that we expect to have really, really good teams year in and year out as they fill out their roster.
Yep, I am so glad that you mentioned the CAA. That's certainly been a conference I've been taking a look at. Charleston bringing in Mr. Dean, which I still think is one of the best names ever. I thought that was very rock solid for them, just like you're always a rock solid guest, Ryan, as you do such an amazing job over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. You're deciphering a little bit of everything. Obviously, the Ryan Ruff Show for all of your West Virginia work and so much more. So love to get people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yes, sir, Greg. I always appreciate it. Yeah, you can check us out over at the College Experience every single night, breaking down the portal. I know this is a basketball show, but college football around the corner. So Colby and I will begin our 135 team preview. Every team gets one preview.
Absolutely. I know that Kobe is out there in, I believe, South America this week as well. So
Yes.
we are getting some international flavor out there on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. I love it. He's probably taking a look at South American football right now and not the soccer version, the actual football version, because he makes money on every single one of those leagues. It's absolutely insane how he does it, but somehow, some way he does. And every single time he joins me, Ryan, he always does a great job of lending his insight. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me on Coast to Coast Super South, part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and coming next, let's round up all the news and notes we saw in college basketball Monday.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
We're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to get Ryan McIntyre aboard. He does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Take a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So a big thanks to Ryan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. The Duke Miles experiment at Virginia did not last long, as he committed there and then he did not play a single game. I think that he also committed to Texas A&M at one point as well, but Duke Miles has now landed at Vanderbilt, so he's going to be staying within the SEC. So he's committed to 3 SEC schools within the last 2 months, so there's that aspect of things. But guy was able to average 9.5 points, pair of assists per contest, shot 43% from three-point range. Guy was rock solid over at High Point a few seasons ago as well, where he was able to show a little bit more of an ability to be able to dole out the ball. This is a really good pickup for Vanderbilt, and for Vanderbilt, let's hope that he actually stays there, because, well, he's already changed his mind a few times. I think that this late in the process, they should be able to stay with him, but that said, you just never ever know in the transfer portal process. But you know what, this is going to be able to help them out from the outside. I think that he's just a really good fit, and he was a part of one of the best three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball last season as well. That's a place where Vanderbilt was very much lacking. You've got Frankie Collins coming in from TCU. He's able to generate a bunch of turnovers. Mikey James was over at NC State. Mason Nicholson is going to be able to help them out on the glass as well. Jalen Washington too. So, I mean, this has been a really nice transfer haul for Vanderbilt. I really love what they're building over there with Mark Byington, and feels like the wheels are certainly churning with them. And this is a pretty solid pickup as well, as you've got Trey Duvet. He was over at Western Illinois this last season, about 9 points per contest at 6'5". He's decided that he is going to be going to Mount St. Mary's for the Mount. When this team is really at full force, they're able to get a lot of rebounding, and at 6'5", he's got a little bit of versatility. He's going to be a bit undersized out there in the Metro Atlantic, but in the Metro Atlantic, it's not like you need super duper loads amount of size or anything like that. And this was a man that last year shot 36.7% from three-point, so some relatively good versatility there for Mount St. Mary's. Not a team that's made a whole bunch of moves here in the transfer portal, as the Metro Atlantic has certainly been one of those conferences over the last few seasons that they have been hurt much more by the transfer portal than they have been helped by the transfer portal, and they do lose quite a few of their main rebounders from a season ago, but this is going to be one that's going to be able to help them out, and this is going to be one where they should be able to get quite a bit of, shall we say, versatility out of as well. And for Mount St. Mary's, if you're looking at some of their other transfers, being able to bring in a guy in Antasalis Rozeskis out of Florida State, and you could tell I was guessing on that last name, he should be able to give them a little bit of versatility as well. Additionally, they bring in Anthony Arrington, who is over at Wofford. He's a relatively good shooter that's able to dole it out, so I do like what they're building over there, and I do like this pickup for them, and I do like this as well, as you've got a gentleman that was over at Robert Morris, and Mario Hansen Jr. He has decided that he is going to be going to Maryland Eastern Shore. Was a little bit of an afterthought this past season, not necessarily a guy that was able to give you a whole bunch of anything, but you know what, this is big for a Maryland Eastern Shore program that, let's call it what it is. They just have not had a lot of talent in general. They had very much a bit of a transitionary period last year as they had one of the latest, shall we say, coaching searches in all of college basketball. Franson only played in 4 games last season. 6'7" guy should be able to help out a little bit more down the hole for a Maryland Eastern Shore team. Then call what it is. They did not have a lot down low, so that's going to be a relatively solid pickup for them, but certainly not a guy that's going to be any sort of like a super duper elevator or anything like that. You've got Jayu Atuka going from Jacksonville State, and he's going to be heading on over to Northern Illinois. This is a really good get for Northern Illinois, as Atuka last season, he was over at Jacksonville State, had a nice start to the season, really did fade a little bit late. Overall was averaging about 8.5 points per contest. Really, he's not a guy that's going to give you a lot of rebounding or anything like that. He's a one-trick pony guy that is going to be popping it a lot from three-point range at his best year. Maris during the 2021-22 season was 41% three-point shooter. This year was a 35% three-point shooter, as a little bit of a sixth man for Jacksonville State, and for Northern Illinois, it certainly has been a rough go of it for them the last few years, to say the least. They just need to be able to form any sort of positivity that they can, but I think that this is very much a step in the right direction in a MAC conference that just overall has been down the last few seasons for Northern Illinois. I don't think that they're going to be any sort of a competitor in there, and if they want to be, they're going to need to add a little bit more, but still, they've had a relatively solid offseason. Adding in their Malachi Valentine from Missouri State is a good way to be able to go. They're bringing in a lot of these ancillary pieces like DeMar Kelly, who's over at St. Francis of Pennsylvania. He's going to be coming in as well, so for Northern Illinois, a ways off from competing, but this is their best portal add here in the offseason, and this is very much a step in the right direction for them. You've got Colin Metcalf, who was over at Northeastern last year. He's decided that he's going to go to Maryland, and for Maryland, they do get a guy that was averaging 2.5 blocks per contest, but let's call it what it is. Probably not a guy that's going to be seeing a lot of minutes. Averaged 4 points, 5 boards, so 2.5 blocks per contest, so he's fully capable of being a big man, and as we know, in this Buzz Williams system, he's going to be utilizing a lot of different guys. He's going to be having pretty much like 8+ different guys in the rotation, so perhaps he can be able to crack the rotation. Maryland has had themselves a really nice offseason, though, so he's going to be hard-pressed for minutes when you bring in guys like an Isaiah Watts, who comes in from Washington State. You've got a few guys like Solomon Washington that are going to be coming in from Texas A&M for L. Payne, as well. Miles Rice, he's going to be able to headline things in terms of backcourt, and then down low, you've got a few guys that should be interesting mixers and shakers for the team. Elijah Saunders has some good versatility, but this is certainly a nice shot blocker to add, and that's very big to be able to have that depth with this system. This is going to be a solid add as well. Cody Cluett, he was over at San Diego this past season, began his career over at the Division II level. He averaged last year in that neighborhood about 9 points per contest, 6'5", a little bit of a combo guy who had a really nice start to the season, faded a little bit towards the middle part of the season, and then picked it up a little bit more towards the back half of the season. It was a little bit up down all around. He's going to look to help out a Winthrop team that was frankly one of the worst free throw shooting teams in all of college basketball. So he did shoot 89% at the free throw line. That'll be able to help him out. Shot 32.5% from three-point. Defense for San Diego is very suspect. He really wasn't a helper with that regard. But for Winthrop, I think that he's going to be able to come in right away, give the team a little bit of versatility, as they do lose quite a bit of that backcourt from a season ago. So I like this ad, and this guy is very versatile. Jalen Bolden, he last year was over at Louisiana Monroe, was averaging 6 boards, 2.5 assists, just under 2 steals, 13 points per contest. Not a guy that's really going to light you up from three-point range, unlike a lot of guys from Texas State did a season ago, but he is going to be heading on over to Texas State. He was on a Louisiana Monroe team where they just didn't provide anything around him. He was trying to be able to do a little bit of everything. Now, again, shot 25% from three-point range last season, but I think that this is a really good ad. He's able to help out in terms of spacing the floor. He's able to be a little bit of a bigger point guard when needed as well. He's got good versatility. This is a Texas State unit that is going to be looking to perhaps add 1 or 2 more pieces in via the portal, as well as this was a little bit of a, shall we say, slow start to the offseason for them, but all of a sudden they're starting to cook with some gas. They've been able to bring in some nice guys here to be able to elevate in a Sun Belt where it's been interesting. It's been very hit or miss with some of these teams. Like, I like what Marshall has been able to do here in the offseason. James Madison has been able to add some nice pieces as well, but for Texas State, a little bit slow going for them, but they got on the board with Tate Knox a few days ago as well, so now they're starting to be able to pick it up, and I do like this pickup for them, and then I absolutely love this pickup as well, as you've got Yufat Moody. He was over at Iona this last season, averaging about 9.5 points, 7.5 boards, and a steal per game. He has decided that he is going to be going on over to San Jose State. When San Jose State had great success, I believe that was 3 years ago when they made that CBI run they were doing it by a whole bunch of rebounding, and then you had a lot of guys who get hurt. It was actually 2 seasons ago, so check that, but still, they were able to really find it, and I think that this is the exact ad that you need if you're Tim Miles and company, as I think that he's just going to be able to add some rough and tumble in general. Iona was actually pretty solid with regards to their overall defense. The offense left a whole heck of a lot of something to be desired, and you had turnovers upon turnovers for San Jose State. Been a little bit wobbly here in the portal, but they bring in Kobe Garland, they bring in Javon Hanna, and now they are going to be able to get this nice ad in Mr. Mundi as well. So roster is really starting to figure itself out. Would like to see them play with a little bit of a deeper rotation than they have the last few seasons. They've left themselves no forgiveness with that, but I think that this is a solid ad. UC San Diego, they just continue to add as they bring in Tom Beatty. He was over at Hawaii this last season, averaging 7.5 points, a little bit over an assist per contest. Guy that was a bit hit or miss from 3-point range all season long. And for UC San Diego, I don't even know if he's going to be able to crack the starting rotation for them. He's a really nice depth piece, though, as for UC San Diego, over the last few weeks, they have done a really good job of being able to upgrade this roster, as I like the fact that they brought in Alex Shulkin, a double-figure scorer over at Lafayette, was really good as a freshman last season. They bring in Ty Dunn, who he had his turnover issues at Buffalo, but good coaching should be able to help him out a little bit. Tripe Johnson, who comes on over from Montana State, Bull Dengua, he's going to be coming on over from Portland as well. They have really added a lot of pieces here over the last 2 or so weeks, and for BD last season, shot only about 25% from 3-point range at 6'4", so left something to be desired there, but always a rock-solid defender, so I do think that he's going to be able to fit this UC San Diego system, help them be able to generate some turnovers, and I think that this is going to generate a little bit of something as well. TJ Wainwright, he was over at Long Beach State this last season, 13.5 points, shot 40% from 3-point range. Now, it was on a Long Beach State team that had their issues in terms of taking care of the ball, but he's going to be adding on over to Pacific, and for Pacific, they've done a nice job here in the offseason of just being able to retool in general. This was a program that last season they were in transition with having a bit of a coaching change, a hire on Dave Smart, who was so good at the Division II ranks, but you tell that he needed to just find his roster, just be able to find a little bit of an identity, as he actually spent a long time coaching out there in the country of Canada for Carleton College, so he was making a big giant transition there, and now they've been able to find some really good pieces. Dom Capriati was a nice 3-point shooter a few seasons ago over at UC Christian. Jaden Clayton was a very good point guard over at Maine. Isaac Jack, who's a big man that I felt like had a lot of upside over at Dayton, and Alexis Marmioli, double-figure scorer from Lamar. This is really starting to come together, so I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Pacific. Could be able to take some strides forward out there in the WCC. Arne Nzojan, hopefully I said that correct. He was over at Eastern Michigan this last year. 7.5 points, steal per contest, 6'6", a little bit of a combo player. It's going to be going on over to Northern Arizona. For Northern Arizona, they've had a slow go of it here in the transfer portal, and they were very much a top-heavy team last season. As last season, they had the good top-flight talent, but the, shall we say, number 2s, number 3s, the guys that were coming in off the bench weren't able to provide them with much of anything. So I do think that it's very imperative that they continue to have by the transfer portal, because they just haven't brought in a lot of guys this offseason. That said, this is a step in the right direction, as they did maintain Jaden Jackson. He was that number 3 scorer from a season ago, and Isaiah Shaw was relatively solid as a 6'7", a little bit of a wing joker player over at Valparaiso as well, so they've done a nice job being able to add a little bit more versatility for this upcoming season, so that way they might not need to have like a one-trick pony guy. But Osinojic, he was able to shoot about 35% from 3-point range in 2 seasons over at Eastern Michigan. He's able to give you a little bit of rebounding at 6'6". Really like his game in general. I think that this is going to be a solid ad, and that play is really going to lend itself to the big sky. Malik Asiawood, he was over at UMass this past season. He has decided that he's going to be going to Southern. For Southern, they get the rebounder that they so badly need. Southern, they were able to do a nice job of rebounding by committee last season, but really didn't have a guy that would give you 5+ rebounds per game. Asiawood, he had 6'10", was able to give the team 4.5 points, 5 boards, just under a block per contest last season over at UMass. He's able to be that nice rim protector. It is a bunch in Southern that plays really good defense. They generated a lot of turnovers, and he's not necessarily going to be able to provide that, but they needed someone to be able to step up, give the team a few boards. He is certainly going to be able to do so, and this man has decided that he is going to step away from the school that he transferred to and go back home. Jackson Skipper, he was over at Oral Roberts this past season, and he was averaging right around about 5 points per contest. He has decided that he is going to be heading back to Vermont. For Oral Roberts, it was just a dismal season for them last season, and for Skipper, when he was at Vermont 2 seasons ago, only played 11 games. He was limited by injury this past season, shot 36% from three-point range over at Oral Roberts, and I think that this is a case where they both need each other. Skipper is a 6'7", little bit of a combo player that could be able to step in, help out Vermont right away. They thought that they probably weren't going to have a lot of minutes for him. He would have probably been pressed into a lot of action this past season because of the injuries that Vermont did sustain, and you could tell that that was just not a Vermont-style team this past season, and they've done a nice job of being able to bring in some guys here. Trey Woodyard, he comes in from within the conference over at New Hampshire, 6'6", a little bit of combo guy. Gus Yeldon, I really like what he's able to provide down low as well, but Michaels has a little bit of versatility coming in for Buffalo as well, so it is very clear that Vermont is going to be looking to go big because they bring back the TJs, TJ Hurley, and TJ Long in that backcourt. Now they're going to be able to pair them up with a lot of size, and I absolutely love the approach that they are taking. And the TJ Birch, he has decided that he is going to be going to Wright State. He was over at Ball State this past season and was averaging about 5 points per contest. I don't think that this guy's going to be going into Wright State and is going to be completely glued to the bench. I don't think that he's going to be any sort of like a double-figure scorer or anything like that, but I do think that he's going to be able to help out a little bit. This is a Wright State unit that has went through a coaching change over the last 24 or so months, and they brought in a few guys I like. Sam Alamitu, who was over at Vermont this last season, and solid. Brian Itaminu, who was able to average about 2 blocks per contest over at Merrimack. They are really going to be able to improve their defense, and that's primarily the ads that Wright State has had, because Wright State for the longest of time has been a relatively rough defense, to say the least. Birch is really your first more offensive piece for the team, as he did shoot 56% from three-point range this last season. Now, I say that with a little bit of an asterisk because I believe that he attempted 16 threes this last season, but he went 9 of 16 from three-point range, so got that going for you. 4.5 points per contest. A little bit of a one-trick pony guy who at 6'1" is not necessarily a primary ball handler, but I do like this ad for them, and what I do love is just bringing you guys everything that we're seeing in college basketball. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and big thanks once again to Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network for joining me in segment number 2, and I'll be back with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.